Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 5 of season 5. If you've just joined, I'm Robyn from At a Tired Witch Everywhere, and I'm joined by the beautiful Maria of Maria the Arcane Everywhere. And later this episode, we will be joined by Moss Matthey to talk about his upcoming book, An Apostate's Guide to Witchcraft, which is very exciting.
Yeah, and the interview was so good.
So good.
So good. Like, I don't know. I can't stop thinking about it. But anyway.
Me too. I'm really excited. Like, I'm genuinely really excited for his book, and I'm gonna like devour it.
Same. I think it'll be a very important book for many witches to read who like deal with religious trauma, because I feel like many of us do. So, yes. But we did want to mention that we also have a palmistry class happening literally like 2 days after this podcast comes out. And
no, it's a week. It's a week after.
Oh, is it a week?
Today's only the 20th, Dorco.
Oh, hello. Time is not real. Time is fake. Anyways, that's going to be on March 31st. It's going to be taught by Paula Victoria on palmistry basics. Yes. And Paula was on our podcast last month, and she was so amazing, and it was highly requested that we do a class with her. So yeah, it's going to be really good. It's going to be so good.
We hope to see you guys there. It's going to be really good. I'm super stoked on it. So.
I am. I'm bringing my notepad. I'm going to take all the notes. I will get back into my high school frame of mind, who was really into it. But anyways, for our coffee talk episodes, we had just opened up this season, like a hotline that you can call and leave us like a little voicemail with your stories, ghost stories, witchcraft stories, or any type of funny story you think the community would love to hear. And if you would like to leave us a voicemail, the number is 351-207-0799.
Yes, and we really love them. I mean, our last coffee talk was with them. So good.
Yeah,
and don't forget,
love them.
Don't forget that if you do want to send us a story, but you're not comfortable having your voice on the podcast, you can still shoot us an email. Our next coffee talk is going to be reading email stories. So we still very much are accepting those.
Yeah.
If you just joined us this week, every single week we talk about upcoming lunar phases and how you can utilize those in your magical practice. Now, that being said, our next major moon phase is going to be on March 25th. It is the full moon in Libra. And I think full moon in Libras are great for two major things. First of all, Libras are a very sensual house. They're a very sensual sign. Okay, so your first option when it comes to the full moon in Libra is diving into magic that deals with like pleasure and self-expression. If you're somebody who likes the idea of sex magic but has never really tried it, maybe this is the time to explore that, including self-sex magic. It's your body, it's your life. Do what you want. This is a really good time for that, though. The second thing that the full moon in Libra is really good for is bringing balance back. If we think about Libra when it comes to tarot, it's the Justice card. It's all about finding balance. When you think about Libra in terms of astrology symbols, it's the little weights thing. So duh. But this would be a good time to use magic that is going to bring balance back into your life. So perhaps you are dealing with work conflicts or friendship conflicts where you don't feel like things are so balanced. Maybe your voice isn't being heard, or you're taking on more work than you should be. This is a good time to do magic to kind of even the scales a little bit. I think overall it's a pretty useful full moon for that reason. And it's also a very versatile full moon for that reason. Things like pleasure and self-expression is such a broad topic overall. But then finding balance is also a really broad topic. So I feel like this is one of the few moon phases where we have just like a really, a really big broad brush we can paint with.
Yeah. Yeah, I definitely agree with everything that you said. And
Thanks.
I also like how Libras, like, they kind of like romanticize their life, and also
Yeah.
they try to find beauty in everything that they do. And so I think this would
Yes.
be a great moon to do like some glamour magic, or even just like put
Oh, I like
out,
that idea.
yeah, put out your glamour magic tools, like even if it's like a lipstick or maybe a piece of clothing that makes you feel really good about
Like
yourself. Just
charging
put it,
them.
yeah, put it underneath the full moon.
I like that.
Yeah, and I do think moon bathing would also be a great thing to do this moon,
Of course
to
you do.
like, of course. Just with glamour magic in mind, go under, either go outside skyclad and like rub those moon rays all over your body, or just, be that weirdo who turns off all the lights and like stands out in your window with the moon shining in. And, go through the motions of showering. I do that, but anyways.
Yeah.
But
I get it.
yeah.
And I think that it is, like, I'm teasing you, obviously, but I think that's a really good idea.
Yeah. Yeah. And
I think it's smart.
And I think you saying balance, like this would be a great time to be like, what is out of balance in my life right now? What am I giving too much of my energy towards that is not really worth my time and my energy? And so you're kind of like, balancing the scales a little bit and doing something more that is worth your time and your energy, and putting, your intention and spell work towards that.
Yeah. I think that's really good advice.
Thank you. So every podcast episode, we kind of talk a little bit about tarot. Previous seasons, we've talked about like individual meanings of cards. And then last season, we went over like the whole sections in cards, like the aces, the queens, the major arcana, the minor arcana, and things like that. So, but this season, we're kind of concentrating on the themes that we find in tarot and cards that represent those themes. So this week, I thought we'd kind of go off the interview that we did with Moss, and it's going to be leaving things that no longer serve us. For me, I picked the card Judgment, and Judgment to me is literally leaving our comfort zones and becoming, it's kind of like our comfort zones can be such a negative space in our lives where we get trapped in this like cycle of negativity, and like we close ourselves off. Even though we're not happy in this space, it's still a comfort zone that we refuse to leave because it's all that we know. And that's, our day to day, and that's what we're comfortable with, unfortunately. Judgment kind of asks us to step out of those boxes. And even those boxes can represent like societal things. Like, let's say that you're in the closet in certain areas of your life. It's kind of like being like, at this closet, and then stepping out and being true to yourself and all that. And when you decide to leave that behind, you tend to feel more comfortable about yourself, and you can even find community, which we see on the Judgment card itself as well. The next card I picked is the Six of Swords. And on this card, you literally see someone in a boat drifting away from, what they once knew. And this usually follows like leaving something from our past behind, and a painful past, like trauma, or like just generally leaving something that is not serving our mental health. And this card kind of like invites you to explore the baggage that you are carrying with you as you move on to the next phase of your life. Like, are you going to use this stuff as an anchor that will keep you still tied to the past, or are you going to use it as knowledge as you move forward? Obviously, the things that follow us can still make us upset and still, kind of weigh us down a bit, but it doesn't have to keep, you don't have to let the past like keep its claws in you and keep you stuck and stagnant. You can keep moving if you're, using your baggage correctly.
The correct form of baggage use.
And then speaking of like using your baggage to your benefit, I definitely wanted to mention the Queen of Swords. To me, the Queen of Swords, like if you're looking at the Rider-Waite-Smith version of this deck, like in the background, you can tell like there's ashes and like, to me, it looks like a burnt tree and stuff like that. And to me, that represents, her painful past, how hard she has fought to get to where she was. She's used her past, which was absolute shit, as like fertilizer to build up her glorious kingdom and her legacy. And because of her past, she decides to step into her power by using her voice in a way that benefits her and her kingdom and those around her. And, making this leap from past to future, like, obviously, she is all the better for it. But anyways, How about you?
Well, my first one is obvious. It's the Eight of Cups. I really like the Eight of Cups because you see this figure that's walking off into the unknown. There's kind of like, I don't know, hills next to it, and you don't know what's beyond them. And I like that because sometimes walking away from something and not knowing what's next is terrifying. We know that what we're walking away from is so bad for us, but we have no idea what's next. And that oftentimes holds us back and keeps us in these kind of negative positions. Because not the unknown is scary. And I mean, I personally really like having control. And so that lack of control, that lack of knowing is terrifying. But the figure still is doing it anyway. And I think that's really beautiful. You know what I mean? There is a lot of beauty in, taking leaps when we don't know if there's going to be anything to catch us. My next card is the Ten of Cups reversed. Because this card upright is all about family. It's all about this beauty and like having this wonderful life, right? That, I don't know, we all kind of dream of. It's the white picket fence in the deck, right?
Yeah, I literally call this card a dream card.
It is. It's a dream card. And when it is in reverse, we're kind of, I feel, glued to that dynamic, that idea, that ideal that isn't actually serving us. So you might find this card in toxic family dynamics. Like maybe if you have a situation with your parents that's not very good, if you have a situation with your partner that's not very good, and we're holding on to this ideal that isn't awesome, or it is awesome. The ideal is awesome, but it isn't portrayed necessarily accurately in our life playing out. And you know how like sometimes couples will stay together like for the kids, and instead what they're actually doing is like traumatizing their children horribly by making them sit through their bad relationship. Yeah. That's this card. And so although this card isn't about necessarily walking away, it's the sign, in my opinion, that walking away is something that needs to happen. Because we're holding on to an idea and it's not a reflection of reality. Yeah. So it's a self-reflection card, I guess, in that respect. That might lead one to walking away. And the last thing is the Tower reversed. Upright, right? Things are going crazy around us. So psycho, kooky bananas. When it's in reverse, we're the problem. It's that Taylor Swift song. It's me. Hi, I'm the problem. Yeah, that's this card. And I typically see it, obviously we have to see the other cards around it, but I typically see it as like the signifier that what you're doing is not working for you. And that's why things are going so bananas around you. So again, it's kind of like an introspection card. We have to look at everything else around it. We have to consider what the reading is for, etc. But typically when we see this card comes up, it tells us that you're the problem. So something that you're doing is creating the bigger negative thing in your picture, like in your life, that's causing you the hardship. So we need to walk away from our ideals. We need to reevaluate how we're doing things and maybe reapproach it in a different way. So that way it's going to serve us better.
Yeah, I literally, whenever this card pops up in a reading, I'm like, the universe has like flipped your world upside down because you're just
Yeah.
hanging on. You're hanging on. You know you need to walk away, but you're hanging on, and the universe is just going to keep shaking
know
you.
You need to. Like, everything is going bad. This has to stop. And yet, for some reason, you're like, I will sit on my little tower. I will keep doing this. It's fine.
Yeah. I did forget to mention something with the Six of Swords that I think is also very important to say. That, you know, when we leave things that are no longer serving us, and it's hard, that the Six of Swords kind of reminds you that you're not alone, that your guides and people who love and care about you will help you and help lead the way forward. So,
That's a nice caveat.
Yeah.
I like that.
Thanks.
So today we have a very special guest. Today we are joined by Moss Matthey, and you may recognize him from Instagram and Reels, especially if you're on YouTube, which we now record videos for YouTube. So if you want to watch this interview on YouTube, you should. Anyways, please tell us about yourself and even your upcoming book.
Hi, thanks for having me. So, yeah, I'm Moss, the person, not the plant, as I like to say too often. And I've got a book coming out this September with Llewellyn Worldwide called An Apostate's Guide to Witchcraft, which is why I'm here. I left a fundamentalist religious community to whom I'm now considered an apostate, and hence it's an apostate's guide to witchcraft, which is what I do now.
That's amazing. I know that we're super excited about it. Our Discord has been talking about this ever since we brought it up, because we have a lot of people that are kind of in our community who can really relate to that, at least indirectly in some way. So when did you realize that you were not going to be following a Christian-based religion anymore, and why?
It took me far, far too long, to be honest. It's mainly I'm gay. If you've seen me online, it's quite obvious. I live with my partner, Brett, and I knew from about 12 years old, without, obviously in a Christian community, sexuality isn't a topic that comes up a lot, but it was very apparent to me before I knew what being gay was, that I was it. And I was comfortable enough to come out to very close friends as bi, because it was safe. About 18, and I was met with the response of, you know, that's fine as long as you don't do anything about it and don't talk about it. And then it took me probably another 4 or 5 years from there to actually leave. And it took, strangely, not the root of my sexuality. I knew within that belief system I'd never be able to have a relationship. I'd never have that meaningful connection with another person. But it was thinking more about what that belief system actually meant. So the idea of, because it was a sort of doomsday sect, that there'd be an imminent destruction of everyone on earth for the chosen few to be saved. And I started to realize that sounded a lot like a lot of people having to die for very few to get through for not very much merit. And I was sort of thinking about that and thinking, that's not really an equation that tracks for me. It's not something I'm comfortable with. My life isn't worth thousands of other people's lives. And that was sort of the root that let those doubts start to grow. And then that combined with my sexuality and realizing, well, I want to have a meaningful life. I want to have a life filled with love, not a life where all these terrible things have to happen. And so when I left, I still believed really for a little while, but I decided it was better to live an authentic and happy life for however short a time I'd have, than living a long life of fear and having to stay in that closet and being so unhappy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, that makes sense. And I feel like we've heard
It's
that
quite
from...
heavy.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah, but I think it also is something that a lot of people can relate to, even if it's not necessarily about their sexuality, but having like a fundamentally what's the word I'm looking for here? Contradictory thing to the teachings that they've made. Like, but I exist. Am I bad? Like,
yeah. And then there's the whole, like, you know,
Did
it's such a
you find
major
it
part of your
easy?
life. Sorry. But
Yeah.
and then there's the whole thing
Well,
that was
it's
such a
core of
major
who you
part of
are,
your
right?
life for so long.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So did you find it easy or difficult to transition from Christianity to becoming a witch?
It was quite difficult to start off with. Sort of, well, witchcraft and fundamentalist Christianity are about as most opposing viewpoints you can possibly find, I think. So that transition was really difficult. I was fortunate in that my path into witchcraft was through my partner, who was more involved with sort of the spiritual side of life. So he took me to some spiritual shops. We attended some local moots and stuff. And I remember the first time I ever stepped into a witchcraft shop, I was terrified. I'd been taught they were these evil places, and if you step foot inside, you'll get possessed by demons. And even though I was out of the belief system, didn't believe it anymore, it was so ingrained in me that I was so on edge just stepping into that shop. And then there were a few instances. So I attended some spiritual development classes led by Mara Starling, and we went through the LBRP in one of those classes, so calling to archangels and stuff. And I hated it. And having to say like the name of God and stuff, it was so awkward to me, and I got such an ick, and that made me have to work through a lot of stuff and sort of confront why I felt that way and how I could get past that. So there were definite challenges along the journey. And I think where I was lucky is I was out of the fundamentalist belief system for about a year before I stepped into witchcraft more seriously. And I decided to really focus on deconstructing and figuring out what I believed. I knew early on I didn't want to do what a lot of people do, which is I don't believe anything anymore. Because if you fooled me once, I'm not going to be fooled again. And you wanted some kind of spiritual path.
Right.
So I spent a lot of time reading general philosophy and all kinds of weird stuff, which made that transition a bit easier. I think definitely if it had been just a hard transition straight from that into witchcraft, I'd have struggled a lot more.
I don't think that reading philosophy is weird. I read philosophy, okay?
No, it's great. I love it.
Really normal.
It helps with the witchcraft stuff for sure.
It does, yeah. So that kind of leads us into our next question, which is that in like when a lot of people transition from like a hardcore Christian-based faith to witchcraft, they can have a quite hostile reaction to anything Christian. I know that like when I wrote my book with tarot, people got very upset I talked about angels, and I'm like, this is literally just what it means. So when we have this kind of religious trauma and you're leaving, is that something that you struggled with? Like having a real hostility towards anything kind of Christian coming up?
Yeah, for sure. And I didn't even catch it in myself to start off with, to be fair. Like I mentioned with the LBRP, that was sort of the time when I was forced to confront it and go, oh, this is actually a part of magic. This is something that's kind of inescapable. And I also do a lot of work with Welsh and German folk magic. So I was born in Germany, lived there for a lot of my childhood, and then moved to Wales. So I'm fortunate enough to be able to speak both languages and sort of go to the folklore collections.
Oh, nice.
And you cannot escape the Christianity in folk magic.
Totally.
It's so in your face. And that took me a little while to reconcile. And I had to sit with that for a long time, but I think I'm in quite a good place with it now. There's certainly that jarring feeling when the first time you're confronted with a spell that calls to Jesus Christ and the Holy Trinity, and you're like, I thought I'd got away from all that.
Yeah, speaking of which...
I guess the next question... Yeah, go ahead.
But speaking of which, do you still incorporate elements of Christianity into your practice?
More so nowadays, yeah, for sure. So writing the book helped a lot. Well, I like to think I'd got through quite a lot of it before I wrote the book, but it definitely helped me sort of figure out what I was thinking more clearly. And one thing that really helped was the Beelzebub charms, particularly the second Beelzebub charm. It's from about the 9th century, and it's one of the oldest recorded. Well, it's the only pagan charm in Old High German, and it's the one that has the formula that sort of ends with like I struggle to remember it, like bone sprain to joint sprain, bone to bone, blood to blood, so might they be healed. That kind of formula. And before that sort of magical effect charm, there's a call to pagan gods, and it's the only, like I say, Old High German charm that calls to pagan gods. What's really fascinating about it is that that same charm crops up again and again over the centuries, and as society becomes more Christian, the charm becomes Christian. So it uses the same formula for magical effect, but it changes who it calls to. And that sort of made me realize that the language we use in our magic and the powers we call to, they're kind of the set dressing. They're not the magic itself. A lot of the time it comes from us, or it comes from a power, and it doesn't really matter what you call that. I mean, as pagans, we have so many different names for our gods and goddesses that if there was one specific one you had to call to, half magic wouldn't work. If you can take that magical effect, that formula that has the magical effect, and substitute the divinity or the pantheon or anything you're calling to, then that kind of works across a whole spectrum, I think, where you can substitute Christian elements for pagan elements, you can substitute one pagan element for another, or you can work with the Christian element and accept that you're not necessarily calling to the Christian God, you're calling to whatever the people who recorded it were most comfortable with, or what they had to use to make their magic work. So that kind of helped me to become comfortable, not necessarily with working Christian magic, but with using Christian language and symbology, and accepting that that doesn't necessarily have to refer to Christianity in the way we perceive it.
Yeah. I think that too, when you start to study things like theology and you see these overlaps in all religions, like even Abrahamic religions and paganism, etc., you really kind of just start to, I wouldn't say like embrace, but understand that these things don't necessarily mean one thing or the other. There's this massive overlap, and it's really kind of down to the person. You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
So this is a really interesting question that one of our Discord members asked, which was, how do you get over asking the magic or the universe for help with something that seems really trivial? Because in their past through the church, they would say that you could pray for anything, but then would kind of shame you if it was like a silly or trivial thing. And like, have you gotten over that? If you have, what does that look like, etc.?
Yeah, that's a really good question, actually. I love that.
I really like this question too.
It's brilliant, because I can definitely relate to that experience. Sort of, there was that idea that prayer is this really important thing, and you only go to God for these really important matters, and you don't. I guess it's a bit like wasting police time. You don't do it. But one thing that really helped me was sort of deconstructing what prayer means and how that looks from a pagan perspective. Because one of the things I'm really grateful for, because there are things from that fundamentalist religious upbringing that I've brought into my paganism in a big way, and prayer is probably one of those. I'm quite grateful to have been taught the power of prayer and the value of it, even if I don't subscribe to the same forces and deities anymore. Having that ability is nice. And I was fortunate with my partner. He's from a spiritual background, and he was very comfortable doing magic and spells for just about anything. And seeing it work kind of takes that hesitancy away a little bit. It's hard to ignore seeing the evidence right in front of you. So sort of deconstructing the idea of prayer, less being, because the truth is, within that fundamentalist religious upbringing, I believe my prayers were answered. I saw my prayers being answered. And so that's something I had to really meet head on and focus on and understand why that was happening, to be able to deconstruct. Because if those prayers were being answered because the God they were telling me about was real, then that meant they were right. So I know they're not right. So what's answering my prayers? Who's answering my prayers? What's happening there? What's the efficacious thing? And so accepting that, in likelihood, that came from me, or it came from forces that I don't or didn't understand, meant that I was a bit more comfortable approaching those forces, or accepting that I had some innate power. Because I think that's one thing fundamentalism really strips away from you, is the idea of any personal power, because you have to rely on that for everything. Like everything has a predetermined outcome. Everything has a value. It's right or wrong. It's good or bad. You have no influence on that. You just consult scripture or consult God, and he tells you, is it right? Is it wrong?
Right.
So to get away from that and accept, no, I actually have power. I have influence. Things can be very grey. There is a middle ground, and I can have power to manipulate those outcomes. So it's helped me to approach that a little bit more, and to, accept that I can have that influence even in small ways, and that's not a bad thing. In fact, that's the majority of what witchcraft is to me.
Yeah.
It's not usually doing a spell to win the lottery. It's, I don't want it to be raining right now. Can it stop, please?
First of all, speak for yourself. All my spells are about winning the lottery. Okay? And that's why I'm so rich now. Many are saying this.
First, I thought you were going to say asking for rain. And I was like, well, we had a very wet winter. Do you want more rain?
No, I'm all right. Best dry weather now, please.
That's more than fair where you live. So, what about witchcraft, occultism, or personal practice caught your eye or first drew it to you?
I love this. This is one of my favourite things to talk about, because I was raised in Welsh education. So my most of my primary and all of my secondary school education was in the medium of Welsh. So all of those Welsh myths and legends was something I was really intimately familiar with and fell in love with from being a child. But being in fundamentalism, sort of symbology didn't matter. Everything was very literal. And they were just stories to entertain, and I enjoyed them as such. But once I sort of started to deconstruct, those stories were always there. Those myths and those legends, there was something that I'd learned in their own language and that I had some kind of connection to, but they took on a spiritual significance then. So I was quite fortunate to meet Mara quite early on and to be able to connect to that Welsh stream of magic a little bit more. But it was a really lovely thing to find that connection that was already there, but I wasn't acknowledging, and to take delight in that symbology. And I think that's the most powerful thing to me. And it's why I like reading abstract things like philosophy and stuff, is that paganism emphasizes symbols. It emphasizes symbology. It emphasizes finding the truth below the surface, or the truth in the lie even. Like when we approach folklore, we're not looking at it as an objective true account of something. We're looking at it as a spiritual truth. Can we find some spiritual wisdom in that, or some kind of magic that we can use in everyday life? So that requires you not to take a literal view, but to take delight in that symbology and that mystery and the pure chaos of it sometimes. And that's not something you can do in fundamentalism in any way, shape, or form. Like I was saying, everything's predetermined, everything's given a moral value already. So to have to approach that for yourself and find the value in it and find the symbology, especially when it's stories you grew up with, stories you already knew, but you weren't permitted to have that connection with them beforehand. That was the probably most powerful thing to me, and that's what created that unbreakable connection to witchcraft and paganism for me. And it's why I still love going to those folklore collections now, and why that's the thing I build most of my practice around, because it's that freedom.
Yeah.
I love that. I love that for you. That's
yeah,
it's really nice.
Mara is amazing.
We do. We're huge Mara stans over here.
We are.
That's very fair.
But yeah, I definitely.
Amazing work. And
She does. Yeah.
Just a good person at the end of the day.
Absolutely.
Like, just a good person. So that leads us to our very last question for you, and then we'll release you back to the wild. Is there anything that you think people in your position should know that once you're in a place that's settled on your beliefs in like post-fundamentalism?
I think there's probably two things that I'd say to anyone in that situation, which the first one is really important, which is it's not your fault. So many people I've spoken to who've been in fundamentalism, who've been in these high control religious situations that they've joined as an adult, carry a lot of blame and guilt for that. I think, how could I have been fooled? I went through that myself really intensely. I was like, if I can be deceived in this way, if I can absolutely, unquestioningly believe in this worldview that was so wrong, then how can I trust myself? And that's, I'm so stupid, that's so my fault. But it's something I've spent a lot of time with, done a lot of research around, and these groups thrive on control. They're built to appeal to what are fundamental human needs. They offer things like community. They offer you love, especially at the start, and these things are really appealing. And then those other harmful practices are drip fed in afterwards. So it's designed to manipulate and control. I mean, one of the most prominent tactics is love bombing. It's front loading all this community and affection in order to disarm you. And so no one is to be blamed for falling for that manipulation. It's designed to appeal to what we want and what we need.
Right.
And the harmful stuff only comes in afterwards. So absolutely, it's never anyone's fault for getting taken in by that, which kind of goes into the second part of it, which is when you escape, when you get out of that situation, a lot of people carry a lot of trauma. And a lot of that comes from, as I mentioned a couple of times, everything has a moral value, everything's right or wrong. It's a very binary view of seeing the world. And it leads to emotions being assigned a moral weight. So what you feel can be good or it can be bad. And the bad stuff you're supposed to bury and put away and not allowed to be a part of yourself. And you're only supposed to focus on the good and transcend and sort of look to that future thing, look to heaven or whatever the belief system puts as that end goal. And so you fall into this habit of suppressing all your bad emotions and calling them bad emotions. And that can make its way into paganism afterwards. That's something that's so important to deconstruct, because if you carry that with you, that usually leads to spiritual bypassing, where you're not using spirituality to deepen self-awareness. You're using it to try and not become self-aware. You want to not deal with those emotions. You don't want them to be a part of you. So you're just looking to transcend. And one of the great values to me of witchcraft is the fact that it gives you the opportunity to deepen your self-awareness and to not assign those moral values to your feelings, to just allow them to be. So in ritual, you just are with your emotions. They're not good, they're not bad, they're just there with you. And I think if you carry that trauma and that moral assignment to emotions with you, you miss out on a lot of the beauty of witchcraft. And like I say, it's one of those paths that can lead to a spiritual path of spiritual bypassing. And so sitting with your emotions, at least for a little while, before you pursue another spiritual path, and learning to accept that they simply are without being right or wrong, I think is something that's really important.
Yeah, I think that's a really, really good way to leave people. Before we release you totally and free you, can you please let our listeners know where they can find you and tell us one more time about your book?
Yeah, of course.
What it's called and when it's coming out, etc.
No problem. So I'm Moss. I hope you know that by now. And I'm on Instagram, TikTok. Sometimes I surface on Facebook. I think I've done one or two things for YouTube, but I'm always Moss Matthey wherever I am. And my book is coming out, I think it's this September in the States. It's called An Apostate's Guide to Witchcraft. And it sort of covers how to transition into witchcraft after having been in another form of spirituality. It's from the perspective of being in a highly controlling religion, but I've tried to write it in such a way that anyone who's coming from a religious background into witchcraft can find something of value there, hopefully.
Well, everything that you spoke about, I think so. Thank you so much for joining us. We really appreciate it.
Thank you so much for having me. It's been lovely.
So, Maria, what's stirring your cauldron this week?
Oh, let me tell you. So spring is definitely springing here, and I'm like so happy. It is amazing. Besides
Spring
the pollen, pollen is disgusting. Anyways, I've already found like so many like different flowers and stuff like that, native flowers that have started making their way. And I'm so happy. I did some exploring like around the place that I live, and I found this little patch of land that no one goes to, that is like free for me to go to. And it's just no one goes there. And so like there's so many flowers, and there's like oh my gosh, what are they called? Dewberry bushes and stuff like that. So there's going to be like berries available in the fall, and there's just like so much for me to explore over there. And I'm just like, I am so stoked.
It's so exciting.
Yeah, I'm like taking pictures of everything. Like, I'm like, what's this plant? What's that plant? And I want to create like a little herbery, like little note list of things that are growing near me, so I can, and then list their properties by looking at their folklore or how they grow, their medical uses and stuff like that. But yeah, I'm like very excited. It's going to be a very good spring.
I'm excited for you. That sounds so fun.
As long as I don't actually have allergies, we'll see. We'll see.
Surprise!
I know. I was like, my ears keep popping. Oh, like my head kind of feels stuffy. Is this allergies? Is it allergies? I don't know. Maybe. I don't know what to do.
Hopefully it's not.
Yeah. We'll see. So, Robyn, what is not stirring your cauldron this week?
Thank you so much for asking.
You're so welcome.
So what is not stirring my cauldron is directly tied into something that is stirring my cauldron. So there's a trend going on right now, which is called occult tea. I don't know if you've seen it. It's people talking about their experiences of being witches online. And it has predominantly been done by people that are pretty new to the creating world, which is not a dig at them at all. Like, their experiences are so valid. I've enjoyed watching their videos, etc. But because like you and I have been doing this since the dawn of time, or at least that's what it feels like, I really want to do one of them. I've been getting back into like making videos and stuff, and I really want to do one. And I have been mapping out my outline of points to talk about, and I know this video is going to be like an hour long. I'm so not excited about that part. But what's not stirring my cauldron is I'm having to think about and write notes on all the things I don't like, that I have not enjoyed about being a witchcraft creator on the internet. And I'm like writing my bullet points on like misogyny, and writing my bullet points on things like the internet taking things so literally when we have like spirituality, which is just nothing but fucking metaphors. Like, not nothing but a lot of our like myths and lore, modern folk stories, and I want to say ancient, but you know what I mean, like older folk stories, etc. A lot of them are rooted in metaphor. Why are we taking everything so literally? And so I'm having to like, well, I mean, I'm doing this to myself, so like this is not a burden, but it is having me explore these kind of topics within myself that I don't like thinking about, but that's part of what I think is important about this entire trend, is like talking about these things that are not fun. And so like that's the aspect of it that's not stirring my cauldron, is having to be like, I get to talk about misogyny. What is Mara Starling, who we talked about earlier when we were interviewing Moss, actually, as Mara put it on the internet, if anybody wants to get on a soapbox and talk about misogyny, it's going to be me. And so I'm using this opportunity to take into consideration to talk about misogyny. Which is like wild. It is wild. Like, I have a whole section on, like, in my talking points on how like witchcraft is predominantly overrun by women or femme presenting people. And yet it is also overrun with misogyny.
Mm-hmm.
It's a wild paradox, isn't it?
Yeah, I wonder who has the louder voice.
Oh, I wonder who keeps getting the majority of the publishing contracts. It's just a fascinating observation. Every single male practitioner or masculine presenting practitioner is so valid. Mm-hmm. What's not valid is the misogyny that comes with that for some of them, which is a really small percentage. Like, if we're being really honest, if like there was 1,000 male, masculine presenting practitioners in the world, like 2 of them would be misogynistic.
Yeah, it's like, the whole,
they're just the loudest.
the whole, like, queer community is very supportive, but then you have like this very small percentage of TERFs who are so loud and so annoying. So loud that you think that there are so many of them when it's really not that many of them.
It's like literally like 1%. But I mean, it's still worthwhile to mention because it does not overshadow, but it is something that impacts our experience.
I agree.
So if you've just joined us this week, every single week we talk about creators that we are loving right now. These are not advertisements. These are just things that Maria and I think are cool. And you might think are cool too. And we have a listener submission as well this season, and last season, that you guys think are cool. And you think that people might think are cool as well. So that being said, Maria, who are you dating this week?
So on Instagram, I don't know if they're anywhere else, but it's the Fairy Forest. And it's like these beautiful, like put together like fairy homes and fairy furniture and things like that. And you can put them on like bookshelves or things like that. I wouldn't actually put them out in nature just because they're so very pretty.
They're so nice.
It's for house spirits, not for other spirits. But they are so, I don't know, just the attention to detail is so beautiful. I don't know, 10 out of 10.
I love that. Mine, listen, I'm going to be really transparent with you guys. I totally tried to get one of these bags for free. I DM'd her and I was like, I'll promote your stuff. But here's the deal. It's a cool thing. I bought it for myself. I'm going to promote it anyway. She said no, for the record, which is her right. It's the Clio Kindle Bag. I've like shared it all over our Discord. I've sent it to friends that I think would like it. It's like a body bag that's a purse, but it has a pocket that is like fuzzy lined and padded for your Kindle. Like, tell me that's not incredible. Incredible. So I bought myself one. I think everybody should get one that is Kindle readers like me. So I don't know. I think they're very cool.
No, it is very cute. Very cute.
It's so cool. I literally can't wait to get mine. I think it's shipping like the start of next month or something.
You're gonna rock it. I just want to see you like at somewhere and just be like whoosh.
I'm literally like, this is my antisocial purse. This is like where I'm at. And I've got my diaper bag, which is overflowing because I have 2 kids now. But I'm moving everything that's a purse into there. And then I'll have my diaper bag as a diaper bag. Isn't that so smart?
So smart.
I'm like really clever. Our listener choice this week was sent in via Instagram. And it's a company or like artist called Silly Sculptures. And they're so cute. The one that got sent to us specifically, which I know that they were just sending as like an example or whatever, are these like kooky little cupcakes.
Yeah.
Like I don't know how else to describe it. Almost like a monstery cupcake, I guess.
It's like giving Alice in Wonderland vibes.
Yeah, but then it also has like a little face on the cupcake. So I don't know. Yeah. It's really cute. I think they're so cute. I'm glad that they got sent to us. They've also done things like cute little mushrooms and like bugs, and I don't know, I think it's really cute. And it is very much so Alice in Wonderland, but like specifically Alice in Wonderland from the Disneyland ride.
Yeah, or Tim Burton.
Yeah, it's like dark and day glow. Very cool.
Yeah. These are very cute.
And don't forget, guys, if you have somebody or like a business or whatever that you guys think is super cool, please send it to us so we can share it with everyone else.
Yeah.
Thank you all so much for joining us today. We hope that we will see you again on Friday, March 29th for our next Coffee Talk episode, or on April 4th for the 6th episode of Season 5. You can keep an eye out on our social media to see what we're doing, or you can head to our website, coffeeandcauldrons.com, to find out just generally more information about the podcast, including things like the Patreon, etc. And don't forget to join us on March 31st, because we'll be having a class with Paula Victoria at 2 p.m. Eastern Time on palmistry basics. This is for the library tier and up. It's available for everyone there. And if you do join the library, we have this whole backlog of previous classes as well as this class you can watch anytime. So like if you can't make it but you want it, you can watch it anytime after this. And finally, if you still are not interested in the Patreon, but you are interested in this class, it is going to be on, or it is on Eventbrite for you to join for a one-off.
Yeah. And additionally, our Patreon Magical Beginnings offers our special 25-minute part 2 episode, a huge library of articles on witchcraft and spell work and all that. And we have a Discord community full of fun events and discussions. We recently added a crafting circle, and I'm gonna host like a Mornings with Maria thing once a month where we will set intentions for the month ahead and pull some cards, just like as a group, as something fun to like bring people together, like if you're at a coffee place and you're doing it with a group of friends. And then we also have a tier that
don't
offers
forget
what?
Mornings with Maria is available for the library tier and up. So if you want to be in an event but you don't want to join the full Discord, Maria's Mornings with Maria is for the library tier and up.
Yeah. So yeah, library tier and up gets to come and join me. It'll be so much fun. So yeah, take advantage of that Patreon membership. But yeah, we also have a tier that offers one-on-one conversations with Robyn and myself.
Yes. Mentorships. Woo! And please, if you're loving our sexy, sensual, just chef's kiss voices, take a moment to rate us wherever you're tuning in from, whether that's Spotify, Apple, or YouTube. And if you are on YouTube, hit the subscribe button as a way of, supporting the podcast. We would really appreciate it. And anybody who has already rated us or is planning to, we really appreciate you. It means a lot to us.
And again, this is Coffee and Cauldrons
with Robyn from At a Tired Witch Everywhere.
And I'm Maria from At Maria the Arcane Everywhere.
Are you ready?
Yeah.
1, 2, 3. Bye, witches!